great to be with you here in Delaware County. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you coming out in the middle of the day. And we need your support. We need your support here in Delaware County more than ever to win in November and to get this campaign and our country across the finish line. So thank you all for being here. You know, when our 6 daughters were younger, my wife Dean and I placed a lot of importance on Sunday dinners. Sunday dinners were important. Like most families, our weeks were very hectic. Dean and I both worked. Our daughters had school, soccer practice, homework, friends. But we would always try to bring our blended family together on Sundays. And I'm sure many of you today here have a similar ritual. Maybe it's church and then watching the Steelers or the Birds on Sundays. Maybe it's Friday night Shabbat. We all do it for a simple reason. There's nothing more important than family. Nothing. At their best, families are the core of our lives. And they're the core of our nation. They are what a great writer called the little platoons that shape who we are, and they give us all a sense of meaning. They are our home, and they are the foundation of our communities. And families prepare each generation of Americans for their futures. But sadly, many families in Pennsylvania and across our country don't have the luxuries that many of us have. More and more children grow up without a stable 2-parent family around them. This trend is even more pronounced in minority communities, with only 33% of black children and 55% of Hispanic children living with married birth parents. The breakdown of the family takes a toll on the next generation. Kids in a single-parent home are 5 times more likely to live in poverty, more likely to have behavioral issues, more likely to drop out of school. And upward mobility, the idea of the American dream, is also stagnating. And it's leaving the American dream, the idea that you're going to be better off, your kids are going to be better off than you, it's leaving the American dream out of reach for more and more families. Children who are born to parents in the bottom 5th of family incomes have a 46% chance of remaining in the bottom 5th. 1 chance in 2 of remaining in the bottom 5th for their whole lives. And only a 3% chance of getting to the top 5th. And Americans are even having fewer babies, despite surveys showing that women wish they could have more. So my friends, America cannot be strong if our families are weak. And if our families are in decline, America will decline. And we can't let that happen. For far too long, career politicians in Washington have made life harder, not easier, for working families in Pennsylvania. Inflation that's driving up grocery bills, the cost of housing, and other essentials. Childcare, it's gotten so expensive it's out of reach for many families. Kids trapped in failing schools. Seniors who saved their whole lives for retirement but can't get access in the later chapters of their lives to the care that they need. Under the watch of President Biden and Pennsylvania's liberal Senator Bob Casey, these problems are getting worse, not better. After 18 years in Washington, Senator Casey has not been a proactive leader. He has merely been a rubber stamp liberal who votes with President Biden 98% of the time. And unfortunately, these Biden-Casey policy failures that we've seen over the past 3 years, they disproportionately hurt working families, families that are living month to month. It's time for new leadership, new ideas to actually solve the problems for Pennsylvania's families. And that's why today, and I'm so glad to have you all here, and I hope you'll bear with me, I want to outline what a pro-family agenda for our Commonwealth and for America would look like. What should we do? And to set the stage, I'll highlight some of the problems facing American families at every stage of life. You have to think about this across the whole life cycle, from pregnancy to childhood to adulthood and retirement, and a range of solutions that we need to support thriving and prosperous families. And at the end, I'm going to give you 4 policy proposals, which when I get to the Senate, you can remind me, these are the 4 things that I said I would do as part of making sure we have healthy families across Pennsylvania. And it starts with making parenthood accessible for every family. There are few special moments in life that ever come close to the joy of becoming a father. or a mother. Few. Any parent can tell you that. It's a feeling unlike any other. My wife, Dean, and I are blessed to share 6 amazing daughters between us. And watching our blended family grow into remarkable young women is truly an unparalleled joy. But for far too many Americans, the blessing of children and being able to grow their families can feel out of reach. Here's some numbers. The average health-related cost of having a child, including pregnancy, childbirth, and postpartum care, are nearly $19,000, including $3,000 out-of-pocket dollars with insurance. And that's if there's no complications. The average middle-class family spends about $13,000 a year in a child's first year of life. And that's only growing because of inflation. At every stage of the process, we need to make parenthood more accessible for every family. And there's a few ways we can help more parents experience the miracle of life. Now, the first thing we need to do, in my opinion, is enact legislation to make contraceptives more accessible and more affordable for women so they can have children when they're ready. Second, I'll always support access to in vitro fertilization to enable parents across our country to welcome children. My wife and I have many friends and colleagues who have used IVF, and we've seen how powerful this technology can be in turning despair into a celebration of new life. And when I was a CEO of Bridgewater, our team felt that we had this obligation to support those trying to have children as well as parents in the workplace. And so as a company, we help pay for fertility services like IVF, which are often not covered by insurance and can be prohibitively expensive. But as your senator, I will oppose any effort to restrict IVF, period. Any effort. But I'll go even further than that. Every family should get a $15,000 tax credit for fertility expenses, like IVF. This credit would put up to $15,000 in the pocket of families using IVF to have children. It'd be fully refundable, and it'd be available up to 2 tax years per family. That's how you make this potentially life-changing treatment accessible to more families who are frankly not able to have children now. Third, we should promote adoption services, which helps make many Americans expand their families and give young children a beautiful home by making the adoption tax credit created by the 2017 Trump tax cuts fully refundable. And finally, it's unacceptable that the United States has one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world among wealthy nations. The U.S. birth rate is also at an historic low, 1.6 children per woman, far below the 2.1 per woman average needed to keep our population in the United States from declining. And this is despite surveys that show women consistently saying over decades on average that they'd like to have 2 or more children. So when combined, these statistics make for a major problem. And in Pennsylvania, at least 5 counties have no hospitals, no birth centers, no providers offering obstetric care. So we need to expand obstetric training and resources for rural hospitals and providers, increase telehealth options, increase support for home visiting programs, and ensure Medicaid covers postpartum care for a full year after birth in every state. Beyond that, we need to expand access to parental leave. While we've made a lot of progress on availability of paid parental leave, we have a long way to go. Listen to this. Only 27% of private sector workers nationwide, only 27%, have access to any paid family leave. That's unacceptable. How can we say we're pro-family when we don't let people take time off to start a family? When I was CEO, I strongly encouraged everyone on my team to take paid leave, regardless of whether they were the mom or the dad. And it always warmed my heart to see these wonderful teammates and friends experience the joy of having children, knowing that it was because they had the support that they needed. Now, we can't do this by imposing a federal mandate. That's not the answer, because it would force small businesses to raise prices or cut jobs to comply with some top-down, one-size-fits-all government policy that's not tailored to the needs of the employees or the business. But I think Congress should incentivize more employers to provide paid parental leave by making the paid family and medical leave employee tax credit that was passed during the Trump administration permanent, and expanding it to cover more forms of paid leave to give small businesses more flexibility. And for new and newly adopted parents who do not have access to paid leave or do not receive 100% of their wages during leave, we should allow them to pull forward up to 3 months of their Social Security benefits to finance it. Now, 3 months seems like a small amount in retirement if you're an elder on Social Security, but for new parents, this could provide a lifeline at a crucial time for their new family. We also need to support parents through the child tax credit. After early years of life, we need a pro-family agenda that continues to support parents. It's getting more and more expensive to have families. By age 8, the average cost of raising a child exceeds $15,000 per year. And that's only going up because of the inflation that's taking place under President Biden and Bob Casey. One of the most important federal policies that supports families is the child tax credit. And the 2017 Trump tax cuts doubled the credit, allowing low and middle income families to receive up to $2,000 per child each year, up $1,600 of which was refundable. President Trump and Republicans let parents keep more money. Bob Casey and the Democrats voted against it. And even with all that, we should do more. I support increasing the child tax credit to $4,200 per child under the age of 5 and $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17, and giving families the option to receive credit in monthly installments from mid-pregnancy to a child's 17th birthday. With the inflation under President Biden and Senator Casey's economic policies hitting pocketbooks every month, it's critical that the child tax credit be indexed to inflation going forward. I mean, think of this. 60% of Pennsylvanians are living paycheck to paycheck. This stuff matters. Finally, families with any income should be able to access credit from the first dollar of income to not disincentivize part-time work. The other thing I want to talk about is mental health services. Mental health is another important priority for families because far too many Americans with serious mental illness are not able to get the care they need. 14 million Americans approximately have serious mental health illness, yet more than half of them have their needs unmet for mental health services. Veterans in particular, something very near and dear to my heart as a veteran, particularly struggle with mental health. Approximately 22 veterans a day take their own lives. Yet according to the VA, 45% of veterans who use VA health services and commit suicide did not have a mental health diagnosis or receive mental health treatment. Half of the veterans who committed suicide got no mental health treatment. We must expand access to care for those with serious mental illness by getting rid of Medicaid rules that significantly constrain access to inpatient psychiatric beds, increasing Medicaid reimbursement rates for the care of the seriously mentally ill, and expanding access to mental health services at the VA. This is an area, one of the few, where Senator Casey and I have some agreement. But these reforms need to get done as soon as possible, and they haven't yet gotten across the finish line. And finally, we need to support our seniors during retirement. My mom and dad are 86 and 84, and I want to start by saying Senator Casey's lying about my position. Let me be perfectly clear, and I want my dad to hear this too. Our government must keep its promises it made to protect Social Security and Medicare benefits for our seniors. That's my position. That's President Trump's position, and that's the position of Republicans up and down the ballot. We also need to address the growing cost of elder care, which places a huge financial burden on families. It's gotten a lot worse because of inflation. Long-term care needs to vary for every senior, but we need to provide more affordable options through expanding health service accounts for seniors, leveraging long-term health care insurance, and increasing access to home and community-based services. These are the kinds of things I'll focus on as your senator. I'll always put problem solving over ideology. I'll always put principles over politics. And I'll always focus on addressing the root causes of the problem, not superficial solutions. And so to conclude today, I'd like to put forward 4 high-impact, concrete policy solutions that I would enact, that I would champion to help support families in our Commonwealth and across our nation. First, I'd give every working family access to tax-free savings accounts to pay for up to $10,000 per year in child care cost. As I just told you, it's $15,000 a year per kid. So this helps offset some of that growing cost. Eligibility for the FSA would begin at the middle of pregnancy and be available to any family with earnings to fund it and not be tied to a particular employer, so it goes with you. Second, we must give more low and middle income families access to child care offered by faith-based organizations and community organizations. The child care plan that President Biden and Senator Casey supported would have forced many faith-based organizations, including the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Union, to choose between their religious mission and providing child care services eligible for federal assistance. That's ridiculous. The Biden-Casey child care plan would have also raised the average cost of child care by $13,000 per year. Most families can't afford that. That government-centric, top-down solution is not the answer. Federal assistance programs should incentivize states to make it easier for faith-based organizations to open a child care facility by streamlining licensing, relaxing worker education requirements, or reforming zoning. At the same time, let's expand the eligibility for child care and development block grant to 1.5 times the state median income for an equivalent-sized family and increase the funding for the block grant. This would make a Pennsylvania family of 4 making $150,000 eligible for a voucher to use at an eligible child care provider of their choice. That ensures parents are making choices, not bureaucrats in Washington, and they can decide how and when they'll use that assistance for child care. Third, and many of you heard me say this, we must expand school choices by providing a federal tax credit for contributions to scholarship funds. Far too many kids in our great Commonwealth are left behind by our education system, and education is the key for opportunity for all. Nearly half of Pennsylvania's 4th and 8th graders cannot read proficiently at grade level. Only 26% of our 8th graders are proficient in math. And this is also a national security issue. We're 28th in the world in math among the 37th most industrialized country. 28th. The greatest country in the world, we're 28th out of 37. Parents should have the right to choose the school that's best for their child, rather than being forced to attend failing schools based solely on where they live. We should be funding student success, not systems that fail to deliver results. Now, growing up as the son of 2 Pennsylvania public school teachers, education meant everything, from food and shelter to the expectations that my parents set for my brother and me. And I feel that same sense of responsibility, I'm sure all of you do, for your kids. And I recently read about a student named Miles Slade Bowers from Harrisburg. And this just reinforces the point. He was supposed to go to a public high school that year and the year after, and it was rated as one of the worst performing schools in our Commonwealth. But he applied for a scholarship from one of Pennsylvania's school choice scholarship programs, and he instead went to a nearby prep school and later went on to attend and graduate from High Point University. It's stories like these that show why the General Assembly in Pennsylvania needs to expand school choice in Pennsylvania. But that's not enough. We also need to act at the federal level. And as a senator, I'll do that. I'll support the Education Choice for Children Act. This would create a federal tax credit that allows children and businesses to make tax-deductible contributions to organizations that provide scholarships to low and middle income families. This would provide tens of thousands of Pennsylvania kids with scholarships to pick the school of their choice, funded not by taxpayers, but by private citizens. Senator Casey won't support this legislation because he's against giving kids in failing schools the ability to make a move to the school of their choice. And that's because Senator Casey's beholden to the same teachers' unions that kept our kids out of the classroom for years during COVID. But here's what really makes me angry. Senator Casey went to parochial school, yet he opposes to giving his constituents in failing public schools the same opportunity. Pennsylvania deserves a senator who supports school choice, because choosing where your child goes to school should not be a privilege that's only reserved for the wealthy and well-connected parents. And finally, we need to ban children under the age of 16 from using social media. ban children under the age of 16 from using social media. A study from the Centers for Disease Control last year found that 20%, 1/5 of 12 to 17-year-old kids have at least one major depressive episode. Researchers such as Jonathan Haidt have documented how addictive and anxiety-inducing social media is a major driver of mental health crisis that's affecting our teenagers. Haidt singles out how unfettered access to social media during puberty can create unhealthy attachment to social media and being online. And let's not even talk about the sexual predators and all the ways that our innocent children can be exploited. Congress has repeatedly failed to update federal laws such as the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act that was meant to protect kids online in the early days of the internet. And this is one where we need to come together in a bipartisan way to address this crisis and protect children by properly treating kids under 16 as minors, needing protection from the harmful effects of social media. These 4 policies provide a sampling of the ideas and the leadership that I'll bring to Pennsylvania as your next senator. I'll fight for every family in our Commonwealth at every stage of life to solve the problems and create opportunity. And that requires change. We need a leader who's going to bring real change. We need a leader who has ideas grounded in experience and a set of principles for investing in thriving families. We need a leader who has tangible policy ideas that will fight to make them a reality. We need a leader who's focused on action, not press releases. Bob Casey is not that leader. Bob Casey has not demonstrated leadership or delivered results. His government-centric, top-down approach, throwing taxpayer money and regulations at problems, has failed us time and time again. Pennsylvania needs an outsider who will shake up the status quo in the Senate and push for bold and aggressive action on behalf of working families. That's what I'll do from the very first day with your support in November. Pennsylvania families deserve it. Thank you very much for your time today, and thank you for your attention.